Good afternoon to one and all. Today we are all here for very important topics that are being discussed on this platform. We are fortunate and we are lucky that we are getting to connect to all the world through these platforms, because otherwise it would have been really difficult to reach to people and uh, exchange ideas and exchange knowledge. All this is happening because of these conferences that are being organized online, and we have not let the pandemic stop the flow of information that needs to be ensured during these times, because knowledge ultimately will facilitate what we want to achieve in this lifetime, and this exchange of information will help us all in the long run. So, coming on to the topic that we are going to discuss today, I don't have a presentation as such, because most of the information that I'll be discussing is my own viewpoint and the personal experiences that I have with this topic. Because the kind of job that I am involved in, sports becomes a very important part of personality development, and I deal with the young adults and youth in on everyday basis. So I see that how sports actually contributes to the personality development of the individual, and what may be the reasons that they are not involved in sports, and what can be done to improve the culture of sports in this particular population, which is a very important part of our uh, whole population. So, so that's why I chose this topic of involvement in sports and developing the culture of sports in the youth population. So, coming on to I'm sure everybody knows about the benefits that are there for benefits of sports that's there for all the people, for all the youth, for all the children. And I don't want to deliberate too much on that particular aspect, but I would like to go on into what might be the reasons that the present youth is not active in sports. So one of the reasons that I think that youth is not active in sports is because they are less confident to participate in sport. This is because sport is a very competitive field. It has, it has instant feedback system. You have instant results, you have a raging crowd that is witnessing the sport. So the performance pressure is very high. We anyway have a very competitive world, and on top of that, when we have a competitive sport also being added to our profile, it becomes really difficult to manage for the youth. So this performance pressure actually makes them less confident in participating in the sport as such. The next point is that they are less likely less likely to perceive that their family and their friends will support their involvement in sports. This is because that we have the kind of academic pressure that's there, the parental expectation that's there, the norms that our society make, that without academics that you are nowhere. Though it is changing, but still there is acceptance of sports only if you perform well in academics as well. Otherwise, it's generally seen from a negative lens, and also sport involvement in sports. If you are not in some team sports, that is, if you are involved in individual sports, it has a tendency to make you little lonely. because when you are performing and when you are acting, you have trials, you have training, you have events that you need to participate. It takes you away from your immediate social network, whether it be your family, whether it be your friends. So that alienation and that fear of being left alone, that also propels the youth for not participating in sports as such. The next point is the coming from the first point itself, that they are less confident in engaging in sport, and they're less confident in engaging in any kind of new sport. Means they are not ready to come out of their comfort zone. They want to be in places where they feel safe, secure, not being judged, and those kind of things are very, very prevalent. So there is a hesitation to get involved in any kind of new sport, because certain sport, after some time, you are not able to perform, you are not able to involve yourself. There is stagnation that comes in. So after that stagnation, when you are required to go and join some new sport, the youth is not able to, that the youth may not be able to do, because of the complacency that has set in, and then all the other factors that come into play. Then uh, then they are less likely to value sports as such, because you have so many things that you need to take care of. We have lot of pressure on youth these days. They are not just some studying individuals who are going to transition easily from one field to another field very, very easily. So all those things are playing at the back of the mind, and they result in being, inactive as a whole, and let alone participation in some sports as such. So, the major thing that we can do here is we redefine the goals of the sports that they are going to get involved in, and just don't include it as a subject that will help them garner more marks. Rather than, it should have some value addition to the sports. Like, for example, if I talk about myself only, when I was in school, when I was in college, if there was a period, or if there was a time slot that was allotted for playing games or playing sports or something like that, I would rather use that free time to complete my assignments, get books from library, and complete the work, rather than actually going and playing that sport and participating in the sport as such. So because in my viewpoint, the way the sport was being functioned, the way the sport was being portrayed, it was not adding any value to my life. So I did not participate in sports as such at that point of time, and neither in any activity. But if it is just there as a subject which will fetch you more marks, so the involvement is very, very low. It is not concentrating on the good part of sports that can make good contributions to your life. So the continuation in the same field is very, very unlikely. So we need to redefine the goals and redefine the perception with which the sport has to come into the picture in a youth's life, and then look at the steps that we can take to make sports a very, very integral part of youth. Now, to understand the changes or the development that we can propose to have in this population, we need to understand that the major characteristics of youth, what is there? Now, they are going from school to college, college to work life, and then from work life to more hectic work life. That is the life of youth, if I can summarize it in, three, four sentences. Now, the transitions that are there will bring lot of changes in the way they are viewing their situations, the way some resources are available to them, the way they are interacting with people. All these things keep changing with these transitions. So, if you need to introduce something into their life, these transitions need to be kept in mind. The second thing is for the youth, emerging identity is very, very important because they want to shape their own experiences and they want it to happen at their own pace. They don't want, some outside compulsion or external factor to hamper their identity that is in the stages of formation. It has still not crystallized, it is still being added on to. So, first is transition, second is the emerging identity, third is the importance of peer group cannot be discounted. uh, the peer group and social support network becomes a very, very important part of their identity as they are going from one stage to another stage. Their acceptance, their approval is a very important part of their identity. So anything that takes them away from this particular group will make them apprehensive for the same. And then the last point is the technological sensitivity because youth is very, very technological sensitive because they want to curate whatever experiences they are having, whether it be, going out with friends, whether it be, they have achieved something academically, whether they have achieved something socially. They want to curate every experience, so they use all type of digital platforms to present themselves in the best possible light. So again, now if we are trying to introduce a particular culture into this population, all these points need to be taken care of. The way it is seen is that the basic categories, like on the face when you see the category of sports, what do you think about people? Like you have three categories basically. You have a sporty person, you have a semi-sporty person, and you have a non-sporty person. So, sporty person, you generally have stereotypical images of a person who plays lot of sports and is involved in sports 24 hours. So, you say that, okay, this person loves sport. Semi-sporty is that, okay, periodically they engage in some activity, they are periodically engaged in some kind of sports. So not to the extent of a sporty person, but yes, they still participate in sports and sports is a part of their life. And then you have the non-sporty person. That is they are not at all interested in sports. Their ambition, aspirations are completely in a different direction. But that is the way we generally see sports and youth. But if you see actually, these categories are more fluid and volatile in nature. It's not, a complete love or hate relationship. We cannot say that all sporty, the categories and the way I explained it, we cannot say that all sporty people love sports and all non-sporty people hate sports. We cannot say that. It's not a love hate relationship, and behaviors vary from time to time. I'll give you a small example for this. uh, you must have seen people who love cricket and who love football. Okay, they are very, very enthusiastic about watching it on TV. They will call over friends and they will have full party when there is a World Cup going on, there's a FIFA going on. Everybody will be sitting and everybody will be watching the sport. But they might not be playing the sport as such. So where will you categorize these people? They love sports. It's not that they don't love sports. They love sports, but it's just that they are not playing it. So what is the difference, or where is the difference coming? What we need to understand is that attitude and behavior form two different parts of indulgence in sports. You might have a positive attitude towards sports, but your behavior might not be aligning with the kind of sports that we are talking about, or the person loves that kind of sport. You have other cases also where the person may be 24 hours, involved in sports, but they might not be interested actually in playing the sport. They might be just since they have done it from childhood. So now, even though they have lost interest in sports, they have to continue it because of the expectations that is associated with it. So now the category that we initially thought of, that you have a sporty, you have a semi-sporty, you have a non-sporty person, those categories don't stand true, because we need to see the attitude and behavior and how for each category of these people, so that they are involved in more and more sports. That was the reason that I looked at these aspects, because unless you understand the needs that are there of the individual to be involved in sports, unless those are clear, you will not be able to make goals that can help them inculcate or make them indulge in more sports. So when we are talking about attitude that is there towards sports, what is needed to be seen? First is motivation. Now, as I told you, the characteristic of youth is that they move from, they are going undergoing so many transitions from one change to another change. So similarly, the motivation to involve in sports also changes. You have initially, when you are playing a sport, like when you were a kid, when you are an adolescent, you are indulging in sports for fun. But then, as you transition from one phase to another phase, the fun aspect changes to function. Like, as I told you, what is the function of that sporting event in my life? So that motivation needs to be taken care of. Then there is perception. Sport is a very emotive word. Some people have very strong positive associations associated to it, but other people have very negative associations with it. So, because of fear of rejection, fear of judgment, they might have been judged like that in the past. So, because of that, they might not be, very positive about indulging in sports as such. This also happens because we have too much focus on traditional sports. That is, the sport idea, like you have badminton, you have tennis, you have all the sports that are internationally represented. So, unless an individual is involved in those kind of sports, you don't categorize that person as a sporty person. So that increased focus on traditional sports uh, makes you more reticent in actually becoming or involved in sports. Then the narrow perceptions, that create barriers, and which are linked to past experience, level of interest, and perceived competence. All these again contribute to your being away from sports as such in terms of behavior. Now here what is happening is there are problems both in attitude and behavior. So the message that we need to convey, for indulging in sports is that we need to broaden the horizon of the uh, uh, topics or the events that are quoted as sports. So that needs to be taken care of, and also redefining the benchmarks that are there in each of the sport. Every person may not be able to play to a particular level for competition, but then a basic level of the sport should be there, and it should be rewarded category wise, so that people are more and more motivated to join the sports as such. And sports, anyway, sports, if it is indulged in because of any compulsion, then there is anyway surety that they will not continue for a very long period of time. So these things need to be taken into consideration. And there is, you must have seen that there is rise of fitness sports. Rise of fitness sports is there because of they fulfill the all the needs that the youth have. That is, they shape their experience, they create meaningful experience, and they are shareable experience. So it is not making them move away from their peer group and family. It is still making them integrated to their family, so and friends. So that's why fitness sports is more in vogue as compared to the traditional sports. So if you make fitness sports a part of a bigger platform, then youth will have more chances of indulging in sports and making it as their culture. Then, what can be the drivers for positive experience and continuation in sports? One is that, sport is providing them the adrenaline and relaxation. They are, a sporting environment is very welcome and positive, and sport is actually part of routine of the individual and not something that they are taking separate time and they are indulging in it. And this sport is shared by their family and friends. These are the positive drivers of continued participation in sports. In contrast to that, what can be the negative drivers? Negative drivers can be that the sporting event that they are participating is really stressful and painful. So they are not releasing any happy hormones as such, but they are actually making the life more stressful. Then sporting environment is very unpleasant and is very competitive, and is a cause for humiliation for them. Then they don't feel fit to participate in the sports, and friends and family take priority over the sports because the friends and family don't share the sporting interest and the participation in sports. So they are, conflicted to choose between sports and their friends and family. So the friends and family take precedence over the other aspects. So, what we can say is, now coming from all the discussion that we have done here, is that uh, we cannot, the categories that we initially talked about, that is the sporty, semi-sporty, and non-sporty categories, they can be recategorized into positive, functional, and uninterested people. Now, what is this positive, functional, and uninterested? Positive people are those who have positive attitude, who are, who are very interested in sports, but they are not actually playing the sport, or may not. Both are included. Then functional people are those who use sports for certain functions in their daily lifestyle. They recognize the benefits of sports and have a functional relationship with it. And uninterested people are those who, are not motivated enough to, engage in sports, and they are not happy with it. So, like, if I have to talk in terms of the motivation perception that we discussed here, positive people and the functional people, their motivation is not the problem. Motivation need not be targeted in these two populations for them to propel them towards making sports their life. Their perception needs to be worked on. But then, in case of uninterested people, it's both motivation and perception that needs to be worked on so that they come into the sporting field. So that is one categorization that needs to be kept in mind when we are propelling them to change their culture. So broadly now, if I see, there are two types of dimensions that need to be concentrated on. You have person dimensions and you have performance dimensions. Person dimensions include the mental health and well-being, physical health and well-being, psychological safety, physical safety, and self-determination. These are all personal dimensions that will when you work on these dimensions in these particular categories that we discussed, that will help bring in change. And performance dimensions include leadership and vision, coaching, daily training, and sports science and sports medicine. I will give you an example of how sports science and medicine and all these aspects can actually contribute to making sports a very integral part of the youth population that we have today. So, looking at these dimensions, now to propel the change, you have to understand the stages of change that the youth generally goes through. So, we have four stages. You have first denial. Denial is that, I don't need to do sports at all. Okay, it's not for me. The second is resistance. Resistance comes that I cannot do it. No matter how much people will, enforce me or force me to indulge in sports, I will not do it. First was is that I don't need to do it. Second one is I cannot do it. Third one is exploration. So exploration stage is like, okay, we can try this and make it better. And the last stage is commitment. This is the way for me, I will do it. So from I don't need to do it to I will do it. That from those stages, the changes that are there, the stages of change that a person has to undergo, if we give enough impetus on each of these stages one by one, then we will be able to make a very what do you say very prominent changes and make sport a very important part of the youth population. So quickly, just to conclude this discussion, I will just leave some food for thought as to what can be the different steps which can in actually implement these changes. So first one is that the focus has to be on the process and not the results. The process needs to be in focus. Like, don't make it about winning and losing. It's about, how the person gets engaged into the sports, how he plays the sport, and as what person he emerges out when, finally the participation is over. The second one is that you need to pave way for natural growth of these youth into the culture. Initiatives like Fit India movement, those are the things that have given this opportunity of naturally paving a way for their growth. Then third point is reactivation of indigenous sports and activities. Now, this is something which is, very, very important to understand. all of us know about, collective unconscious. So collective unconscious is the information and memories that we share with our human race and with our population. So if I look at it, our culture has certain sports that are more closer to, our becoming better in those sports. Our body is tuned to it, our mind is tuned to it. So if from grassroots level itself we inculcate these sports into the curriculum, then there are more chances that a youth will be interested in sports. Like you have Malcolm, you have Kho, you have now Kabaddi has become a part of Asian sports, but then these are certain indigenous sports that can help us to reactivate sports in the youth population. Then the next is that the body and mind needs to be prepared to take on the sports. Physical literacy is very important. That is what is good for your body, what is not good for your body, how your body reacts to the environment, what type of activity is suited for your body. Because certain people have flexible bodies, certain people do not have flexible bodies. So all these things will, help you so help you understand your body better. So that is why I said physical literacy is very important, so that make the youth more physically literate rather than just concentrating on the just superficial aspects of it. That coming to that, then you have mindful eating. Mindful eating will help you make a better body and mind. And the last one is self-awareness. That is, individual should be self-aware about the individual himself, about the surroundings. That will make them more tuned to their environment and help in exploring the new sport. The confidence that we actually lack in indulging in sports, all these aspects will take care of that. Then healthy communication between the youth and coach and parents and family. That is what is required, what is not required. This is my interest, this is not my interest. All that flow of communication will further enhance or further increase the chances of youth being indulged in sports. And uh, the last point is that indulgence in sports should not be, rigid. It should be flexible. Frequency, duration, and intensity of the physical activity all should be very, very flexible for the youth, because they are anyway under a lot of pressure. They are anyway, going through so many transitions. They are fighting for, forming an identity. They have lot of motivation. They have a particular way of looking at things. So when you have to consider all these things, then it becomes important that you provide them with an environment which is flexible. So that was just certain points that I wanted to discuss with all of you in this particular lecture. I am done with my lecture.